Stand by. Is this thing on?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, hello.
You're listening to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
This just in.
Breaking news to report.
We are live.
Old newscasters
Can we just say former?
Sure. Former newscasters reunite behind the mic after more than 20 years.
Old news is good news.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to Old News with Dan and Carrie. We're in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin at the Sun Prairie Media Center today. They were nice enough to let us record here, and we have a great show today. Carrie, what do we got?
Yes, today's topic is one that touches way too many of us, and that is cancer. In 2004, Peg Cokins was diagnosed with bladder cancer. It was slow-growing and treated as more of a nuisance than a life-threatening situation. Things took a turn when the cancer spread to a kidney, which was removed. In 2016, Peg received devastating news. The bladder cancer cells had spread to her lymph nodes, which meant stage 4 cancer. The next year, it spread to the liver. Without treatment, Peg was given only a few months to live. Then a miracle happened. The University of Wisconsin Carbone Cancer Center was doing a clinical trial on a drug to treat exactly what Peg had. Her cancer journey was featured in the newsletter called Advance by the UW Carbone Cancer Center. And here to tell us more is Peg Cokins, also known as my mom. Hi, Mom. Thank you for being here.
Carrie. Anytime I get a chance to sing the praises of UW Carbone Cancer Center, I appreciate it.
Yes, they've been truly incredible from start to finish. So the article in Advance focused specifically on a clinical trial that literally saved your life. And we're going to get into the details of the clinical trial, what it was like to be part of that. But let's start at the very beginning. It was 2004. I was pregnant with my youngest, and I remember the day very clearly that you were diagnosed with bladder cancer. But what led to the diagnosis? What were your symptoms?
Very typically, the first symptom was, as I'm saying, typical blood in the urine.
So that's what alerted you that there was a problem.
Exactly.
And then was it a long time before you got the diagnosis, or did they know right away?
Well, something I'll share that I usually don't is that my primary doctor was like, are you in the middle of your menstrual cycle? And I was way older than that, hadn't had a cycle for years, and kind of left it at that. So it wasn't diagnosed as soon as it should have been.
So I first of all, I want to say hi, Peg. I haven't seen you in so long. I've seen you on Zoom, but I've not seen you in person, so it's great to see you today. And you look great. To hear that you are a cancer survivor. And I didn't even really know about this until Carrie mentioned it months ago. I mean, I know I knew about it way back when, but I kind of forgot about this this treatment that you went through. But you look great. You look healthy. That's great to see. And it's always one of those things to me when I hear about how people are diagnosed with cancer or any disease, oftentimes it's not caught right away. And so between that time where the doctor said to you, are you having your menstrual cycle, to when you actually knew it, how much time was that?
Well, I would say months.
Months.
Not years,
Okay.
months. And because then it was just like, instead of slight blood in the urine, it was a lot of blood in the urine. So red flags were flying all over. And so then the primary sent me actually to UW right away.
Okay.
And to a urologist in Madison.
And how were you feeling? Were you feeling sick? Were you feeling tired? Were there any other symptoms other than the blood in the urine?
Well, hindsight.
Right.
I was having trouble sleeping on my left side, for example.
Okay.
And I was just thinking, I ate too much. I shouldn't have eaten that. Another sign was just kind of a pressure, a bloatedness.
Okay.
But I felt like, again, I probably ate too much. I shouldn't have eaten that. So it's easy to kind of, talk yourself out of something serious.
To dismiss your symptoms.
Well, so many of us do that too, right? We have little aches and pains or things like that, but you really need to start, especially as we age, we need to start paying better attention to our, our symptoms, our signs, our bodies, really. Not to blame you in any way at all, but we're all like that, right? We
Yeah.
think we're just going to power through something. So I think that's
Right.
very common.
And being 55 and I'd never had any health problems, I wasn't at risk for any type of cancer, through my parents, their history, their medical history, and the way that I had never really smoked or,
Right.
some of the risk factors that are common.
Right.
So I never, ever thought bladder cancer.
And what did go through your mind when you heard bladder cancer?
Devastation, shock. How can this be? And I didn't know anyone that had ever had bladder cancer. Yeah.
And so at that point then, when you did find out you had bladder cancer, did you start treatments right away? But Carrie mentioned in the introduction, they kind of kept an eye on it for a very long period of time, it sounds like. Did you start treatments right away?
Keeping an eye on it meant treatments.
Gotcha.
And about, for years I had BCG treatments, which is an immunotherapy that they put right into the bladder.
Okay.
And that's how we were handling it for years until it became stage 4.
And describe the whole process, because my sister lives in Madison, so you would come for treatments and then you'd go to her house. Just describe that, because probably a lot of people have no idea that that's what you have to do with it.
The protocol required that after the installation of the immunotherapy drug that was available, you would have to keep that in your bladder for 2 hours.
Huh.
And at the time, I would have to roll around basically. So I would go to my daughter's couch and do quarter turns, like every 15 minutes, so that this drug, this immunotherapy, could be touching every space of your bladder.
It's like you're baking something in the oven.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right turn,
Right.
left turn.
Yeah.
And so that went on for years, and then
Well,
as
and
I
then
said.
it's so powerful. I remember you always you'd walk in with a thing of bleach. You had to pour bleach in the toilet when you finally went to the bathroom because of all the stuff coming out.
Wow. And I want to ask you, Carrie, what was your reaction when you found out Mom has bladder cancer?
Well, it was so scary, and here I am pregnant with my second, and then terrible thoughts start going through your head, like, well, is Mom even going to be able to, watch this baby grow up, and how is this going to work, and how is this going to change things? And so I was very fearful, but then the doctor kind of framed it in an interesting way, and you can share that part of what the doctor told you about this part of the bladder cancer.
because it was early stage and it was had not spread out of the bladder, he was just like, this is an annoyance. We'll just keep on top of it, and you'll get these installations in your bladder. And, we weren't talking about life-threatening at that point.
Okay. Was it that same treatment then? You did that same treatment for how long?
Good question.
Yeah.
Because we're talking 20 years here, Dan.
Right.
Because then, no, we can figure this out, Carrie.
Okay.
Let's do some
Because
math.
it was
Yeah.
2016 when the treatments changed.
Oh, so you did that for 12 years.
Wow. 12
knew we
years of
could do
that
that
same
math.
treatment.
Right, we are higher level mathematicians here in the family. But how often did you go to Madison for that? Was that like every 8 weeks or 6 months, or do you remember?
That really varied because they would do different assessments, and then we'd say, okay, this will be 6 weeks in a row. This will be 8 weeks,
Yep.
We should do some maintenance, so come back. So that really varied.
But it sounds like other than, having to wait 2 hours and bake the cake in the oven, so to speak, with this, you were able to go about your life as normal outside of having those treatments, correct?
Correct.
So that was great, right? How were you feeling during that 12 years of time? Was there always kind of like this impending, like, boy, I hope it doesn't get worse feeling, or was it just, I'm living my life?
I did not worry about that it was, and none of the doctors really talked about, that this could change, the aggressiveness, the stage. It was just like taking care of business, truthfully.
Just
Now that there is more social media and online availability of the different treatments, which there wasn't at that point,
yeah.
I read about people who cannot tolerate the BCG treatments, the installations, and talk about the different side effects. And I never really even thought about it or was concerned about it. It just seems so localized that it was just like, this is what we do, and we keep moving on.
And
Right.
you always tried to build in fun, too. It's like, well, we're going to Madison. I felt like you always made a point to, like, see a friend, or, you'd always be at Jackie's house and see the grandkids. Like, or we're going to visit here and then go get the treatment. Or we've never been to the gardens. We'll do that and then go. So it's like you tried to make it, like, an appointment that was not just all negative. It was fun.
That's true. And actually, I would treat myself with McDonald's on the way home. That was before metastatic
always a good
cancer
thing.
treatments.
Yeah.
And so then I started, I think I better learn more about anti-cancer nutrition.
Yes, and we will be getting to that part soon as well.
Yeah.
So-
But the treat,
Right, like, I
was
need a
thinking of
reward.
Reward myself.
Well, an attitude, you hear this from so many people who go through disease. Attitude is so big. So It's so important, it sounds like. So if you can manage to remain positive, think of, the next day and the next year, it seems like that helps immensely for whatever disease you're fighting through. So it sounds like that's how you were approaching it too. Just live your life. Yeah.
There was a big bump in the road, though, that was not even related to the bladder cancer in 2010. Shocked to learn you had breast cancer. And it wasn't bladder cancer that spread. It was just separate cancer, breast cancer. Would you tell us about that?
Well, you're right. The surgeon, actually, it was the urologist said, because I'm questioning, it's like, well, is this part of a typical journey? And he said, no, lightning has struck you twice.
Oh, boy.
And so, yeah, dealing with that. Now, that was not as, I guess you'd say, life-threatening because it was contained. It was not, it had not spread. There was no metastasis. So I did have the surgeries, and but then I did have a major infection.
Oh.
So that did set that back.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, I don't want to make light of it, but in comparison, it was like a one and done, having the
Right.
surgery, getting rid of the infection, and then
Wow. So that was 2010, you said. And then it was another 6 years until you found out you were stage 4 with the bladder cancer.
cancer.
And did it just go like from what were you considered to be, what stage were you considered to be in with your bladder cancer until that point?
that is a good question because they were not talking about stages
Okay.
much with me at that point. And of course, if it had spread to the kidney, I don't know if you'd say, I need a doctor sitting next to me to,
Right,
yeah.
right.
to explain that correctly. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to even try.
And that's
'cause
okay,
It's probably
right.
misinformation.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and all the cells, again, no doctor here, but the urothelial cells are, like, similar, right? In the bladder and the kidney, it's all kind of...
Well, and the ureter, that is all
Right.
connected.
It's all connected, correct.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all in there.
The kidney coming down the ureter into the bladder.
So they had been watching that spot near the ureter. There was like a little suspicious something going on, watching it for a long time, but then
Right.
there it was. So you found out that it had spread to the kidney, and then the treatment was to remove it.
Right. Remove the kidney, remove the ureter.
And so was that your left kidney then, the side you had trouble laying on?
It was, actually, it's my right
It's
kidney.
your right kidney.
And that was a whole different story. And
Okay.
it was like than sleeping on my right side. But again, I didn't make the connection,
Right.
really.
Okay.
It's just like, let's say that I have a high threshold for pain.
Yeah,
I
right.
Which
guess
I don't
so,
know
yeah.
if I do.
Well, you probably do,
Or
right?
denial. I don't know.
So were there so there were symptoms that were cropping up, like, I'm feeling weird things. We need to look closer. It's just they found it in a routine
Not that
scan.
sent me to the doctor per se. I mean, but for 20 years, starting in 2004, I've continually gone to UW, and there was never a time, more than 6 months at the most, that they didn't see me and assess me.
Right.
It's
right.
been constant.
All right, so that came out, and then did your treatment change at all when the kidney left, or you still had the BCG?
I don't think. No, it was just continual assessment and do what needs to be done.
But then, 2016, lymph node showed up in the lymph nodes. And was that detected again from the constant monitoring?
Yes, it came through a CT, and they could tell,
Okay.
and it was devastating, to say the least. I read my own report. It wasn't a doctor.
That's
Yeah,
hard.
It is when you're
Pretty-
reading it without any context or advisement.
And it was Christmas Eve.
Oh.
It was Christmas Eve that it came through. And actually, we were in Arizona at the time. And so not dealing with UW, because I knew I had pain that time. It was like, okay, I have terrible side effects. I mean, not side effects, side pains.
Yeah.
And some different pains that it was like, well, I've never had these before. So then I had been working so that we could be snowbirds. I had been working with some doctors in Arizona. So then we got the CT. And then every time I've had anything when I wasn't in Wisconsin, it was wonderful that they could send all that then to my UW doctors.
Right.
That they could communicate.
I've actually had doctors, and my wife too, who have said that's a challenge for them because obviously it's your information. It's something you have the right to know, but it's a challenge for them oftentimes because they have many patients, and that information will go out and you read it without, like you mentioned, context. So I feel some, I feel sorry a little bit for the doctors who have to try and beat that, or at least try to get to you to explain it, get it into some context. So that's a shock, and it's
And
hard to hear it that way.
Right, and to be authentic, I mean, all this was through a private radiology
Okay.
that came through. But I'm sure it happens all the time.
Right, yeah.
So this was something different, and I'm sitting there, and actually my husband, Carrie's father, had already gone to bed, and I went and
Oh.
said, "You need to read this with me." And so that was the start of really changing our
Yeah.
routine, our lives.
And I remember that phone call.
Yeah, so you said that was devastating for you, obviously, and then how hard was it to kind of right your ship, right your, just the way you were feeling, how long did it take before you kind of went, all right, I'm going to buckle up and fight this?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a timeline, but, all along, Dan, my faith
Okay.
has been what's kept me going. And I put it in the Lord's hands, and I know He's given us the strength to pursue what we need to fight these things. And so, you know, people will say, oh, you're so strong, what you've been through. But I feel like, thank you, Lord.
Right, right. And you said, Carrie, that was a hard call to get for you. So, I mean, obviously you have a family, too, that is supportive and loves you and cares about you, too. So that's part of the whole process as well.
Yeah.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, we tried to stagger and come out and visit. Well, and then because your treatments changed then once you got that diagnosis, right? For the lymph nodes, that's when that chemo started. And it was a different kind. It wasn't the BCG that she was used to. It was a whole new ball game. So I did go out for chemo treatments and sat with her through some of those, but that was a real game changer.
Were those like where you were sitting for a couple of hours getting the drip?
Yeah, and it would be almost a whole day because you'd have to have the blood work, you'd have to meet with the doctor, and then you'd get the drip for a couple hours.
Right. Yeah. That is a long. It's nice to have somebody there with you. My mom went through cancer and died from cancer, so I understand how that is. But it was nice to have people there. Sometimes she didn't want us there. So.
Well, sometimes you're just conked out.
Right. Yeah.
But,
yeah. And it's the after treatment too that can be, at least back when my mom was going through it. After the treatment was off and you were just wiped out.
Oh, yeah. I could never drive home or anything. I'd go right to bed.
Right. She'd just kind of raise the white flag on that day and say, okay, I've done my thing. I'm going to bed and start fresh the next day. But she did try to, really keep normalcy in her routine, and you would be playing tennis.
You knew what I was thinking of.
What?
When you were out there. And it's like, come on, Mom, we're going to go play tennis. And
well, that's what I was going to tell. Yeah,
I don't feel like it.
Yes, but it was amazing. So I played tennis with her. We're always double partners.
You mean Carrie pushed you to do something? Really?
Dan doesn't know anything about working with me. So she's like, so we went out there, and at first I felt like I was steering her on the court. I'm like, run, Mom, run. Get the ball, Mom. And so, because I know it's like her at the start of our tennis match versus the end, it's like I literally before my eyes watched all the fog burn off because she was just kind of like a zombie when we started. And by the end, I was like, oh, Mom, nice to see you again. And she was like back, just kind of that little activity just kind of burned it all off.
Wow, that's great.
I know.
That is great. And how long was that going on that you were doing that type of chemo?
That was 4 months.
4 months of that. Okay. So you were doing that, and were they at the time, obviously they're kind of seeing, is it working? Are things not, is the cancer not spreading? Are things not growing? Or are they looking for other options for you too?
Good question, Dan, because we were rolling along, and I couldn't finish it because the cisplatin drug that I was given, any kind of platinum drugs, I guess. Here again, I need a doctor next to me.
Yeah.
But they're very ototoxic. They really affect your hearing.
Okay.
They can affect your hearing. Not everybody, but we're all different.
Right.
That's what we keep finding out with all of this,
Right.
and that's why cancer research is so important. But I lost my hearing. I mean, I wear hearing aids now, and they help, but they're not a panacea for normal hearing by any means. So they had to stop.
Okay.
I mean, it was really a severe hearing impairment.
So did that happen gradually? You were losing your hearing, or was it kind of like, I can't hear?
Well, I only have this one recollection.
Okay.
Because it must have been a little bit gradual. And I hadn't been singing. I love singing, and I'm in choirs and church choirs, and I hadn't been going because it was affecting my throat. And I don't know. I just had these side effects. And I sat in the choir with the choir members. It's like, oh my gosh, when did the choir get so bad? Why is the organ out of tune? What is going on? And that was truly when I realized my hearing is in really bad shape, because what was happening is the cells were dying.
Oh my gosh.
And the the nerve endings and all this that makes up your hearing, and it was happening like live,
Wow.
right, in the choir,
Well,
in
and
the
I-
church.
And I should add that she's plugged into this because she was a school speech pathologist. So she worked
Yes.
with, all of that stuff. She's plugged into hearing.
Right, yeah.
And so it's like, I'm sure you had a moment. That moment was like, oh, wait, I know what's really happening right now once I hear what I'm hearing.
Once I got over the
Shock.
how horrible everything sounded.
This choir is awful.
Boy, you sound really lousy today. But, yeah.
You guys needed me.
I know. SOS, Peg, come back.
It's like, oh, Peg, thank you for being here today.
As you can hear, we're struggling without you.
Yeah.
Oh, so then I went back, and we were scheduled on Mondays. So then I went back and I explained my situation to the medical oncologist, and she said, "Yeah, we cannot give you one more."
Okay. So right there it stopped.
But see how I need to be hit over the head with these? It's like, I'm like, no, bring it on. I can have another infusion. We're fighting cancer. It's like blinders.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yep.
it's like, I'm fighting cancer and I can deal with anything that's
Just
thrown
want to
at-
stay alive.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. You know, I think a lot of people are that way, right? You just think we're gonna plow on.
Right.
So
And did you have the neuropathy then too? Or was that,
that
later?
was delayed.
Oh.
That was, I had stopped in May, and then I remember a couple months later in the summer, it's like, oh boy, I'm feeling this left foot. Doesn't feel normal.
yeah.
And was it numb, painful, all of the above?
Yes.
All of
Well,
the
she doesn't
C,
feel pain,
all of the
right? So
above. Yeah,
she
that's
was
right.
fine.
She doesn't know. She's a superhero.
No,
Yeah.
all of the above. If anybody has tried to describe neuropathy, bless their hearts, because I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
And I have it in my hands and my feet from the clinical trial, but I can't really describe it.
Well, I just remember like she suddenly couldn't open the jars, and she's like, it feels like I'm wearing cement shoes, and just like her feet weren't cooperating because she was fast on the tennis court.
I feel like that in the morning sometimes, just so you know.
Right, just getting out of bed. But so she was always a quick one. Like we'd be playing, and I'd turn around and thinking like, oh, good shot, opponent, and she got it. Wow, nice run, Mom. So she was always real fast on the court, and then when your feet aren't cooperating, then she was a
Yeah.
little less fast. Fast forward, she's got her quick. Even with neuropathy now, she was pretty darn quick when we played together this winter.
Did you win or did she win?
We play together.
Oh, you
always,
play together.
Doubles.
You're always on the same team.
Always. That's a
Always.
You
requirement.
guys are probably really good together as doubles partners.
Full of laughter.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We always have
It's
howling
like,
laughter for
that
sure.
was the worst shot I've ever seen, and then we laughed.
Yeah, exactly. As I whiff the overhead.
At that point, then, you need a new treatment. I mean, once your hearing is a problem and they have to stop the treatment that you were going through, then they're looking for something else.
And there wasn't anything
There
else.
wasn't anything.
For 30 years, there had not been a new treatment for bladder cancer.
Huh.
And isn't that hard to believe
That
with
really
all the
is.
advances in medicine that there had been nothing. And in fact, that led us to do a walk in Pittsburgh to raise money when you realize there's nothing.
It hadn't been funded well, and it was really a sad time for metastatic bladder cancer patients.
So on the pyramid of cancers, it sounds like bladder cancer is down at the base somewhere. And it's not like the pinnacle of, I guess lung cancer is probably one that a lot of people think of right away, right? Or pancreatic, those types get a lot of attention. But bladder cancer obviously is not getting the attention, or was not.
Not at that
At
point.
that point.
Not at
Yeah.
that point. And you referred to because that was, what year was that? That we did the bladder cancer walk in Pittsburgh.
Right. I mean, that was, I moved there 11 years ago, so it was a couple of years, I think, after I moved. But we formed a team called Peg's Peeps, and we walked together, and it was so moving. I mean, they had people who were getting treatment, people who had lost loved ones speaking before the walk, and then we all walked together. But it really was something that they're just, we need more money for research to get more treatments because nothing's, really come to the forefront yet.
Right.
At the time.
At that point.
At that point. So now we're at that point. Now you realize it has spread to the liver. How did that discovery get made? Was that just routine that you were going in, having CAT scans, and they saw it?
Wait,
It
when does
was.
the story get better?
I know. We're getting to the good part soon.
So, yeah, it was just a regular appointment again at UW, and they did the CT, and it's like, ooh. And once bladder cancer is in the liver, it's not good at all. And as I said, the gold standard I couldn't have anymore because
Yeah.
of my hearing. So bless all those doctors and UW, Carbone Cancer Center, because they had something to offer. And there were very few sites that had this clinical trial going on. And because UW is a NIH hospital, National Institute of Health, and an NCI, National Cancer Institute, that they get these wonderful clinical trials.
Uh-huh.
So that was just like such a godsend that I'm sitting there in Madison, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and that I'm being offered this. They were giving me my whole story. The doctor and the nurse left the room to see if there was a space available for me in this clinical trial, probably both nationally and locally, to see if, there's not that many people that are welcomed into the trials, and you have to meet all this criteria.
That's what I was going to ask. So you had to meet a certain criteria and obviously not have some other treatment available to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And they already knew from biopsies and tissues, that I had this protein that was connected to my cells that this drug is targeting. And so it was like, you would be a good candidate. And I said, well, when you get serious news like this and diagnoses, I've always heard you should have a second opinion. And so I knew that there were 5 genitourinary oncologists at UW. I just happened to, that day I was with one of them, and he was wonderful. And I said, if you line up the other doctors, would they all vote and say, Peg, yes, you should do this? And he said, without a question.
Huh.
And I believed him
Yeah.
wholeheartedly, and I signed the papers because it was 25 pages that they asked us to read through, and we signed that very day.
So were they at that time? Were there side effects? Were there things, dangers for you to go into that program and that treatment?
That's what was listed in the 25 pages.
Okay.
And it's a clinical trial, so they don't know everything.
Right.
But this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen, and
Right.
that went on and on. And but what really turned our heads was percentiles. So they said a person with bladder cancer that had immunotherapy, which was the only thing that was available, the success rate is 20%,
Okay.
maybe for a short time. Then this new drug, the clinical trial, they were seeing with other patients already 40% success rate. So it's like, well, double my chances.
Right,
here.
yeah. Was there
Let's go.
Was there ever any question in your mind that you wanted to try the program, try that treatment?
It was really those two things. One was the doctor saying, yes, all 5 would say, Peg, you're a good candidate.
Yep.
The other thing was the statistics.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see
It's
that.
like-
Well, and I was going to read, this is straight out of the article of Advanced Newsletter from UW Carbone Cancer Center, and this is how they describe the drug, since we are not experts in this by any means, but this is from their newsletter. It said they were testing the use of an antibody drug conjugate, a targeted treatment that used antibodies to bind to a specific protein expressed by the bladder cancer cells and deliver a precision payload of chemotherapy. And then it also goes on to say that you had an immediate response.
I did. I remember the doctor coming in, the nurse coming in, because they had read the CT.
Yeah.
And then they came in, you know how you wait in the room, and they were like ecstatic that they visually were seeing this tumor had decreased in size.
So that was the tumor in the liver at that point. That was
Right.
then
And that
decreasing in
was
size.
because I had to have a CT every 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'd been getting, for 8 weeks, this drug once a week, and they could see this reduction in size of
So
the
it-
tumor.
Was the delivery system was it just like typical chemotherapy then? Were you still going in for blood tests and having the drip?
No, it was, that's what's amazing with clinical trials, that they are constantly documenting everything and assessing everything. So, all this attention on you is really good.
Yeah.
And they would document, and then they had to send it to the drug company
Uh-huh.
because this is a clinical trial. And it all had to be so specific. There was no, it had to, because it was a trial.
Right. And they
you know.
wanted the data to be so pure. Like
Right.
anytime mom
Yeah.
wanted to start a new vitamin or read about some supplement that, might fight cancer, she had to take that back because they didn't want to start mixing things. They wanted to know, is this drug working
Yeah, that makes sense.
or not? So there
Yeah.
were, a whole bunch of things that were like, try this, try this oil, try this. And they were kind of like, we just need pure raw data, later. Maybe later you can do that. But one thing you did do through all of this was you were able to focus your diet on anti-cancer eating and really brought in as many vegetables as the goal every day for mom was as many vegetables as possible. And she called it the Casey diet, because we have another miracle in our family that sometime we'll have to get Casey on the show as well.
Okay.
He is a stage 4 pancreatic cancer survivor.
Holy cow.
You don't hear
Yeah, you
that,
don't hear
very,
that
often.
very often.
And
No.
the quote from a John Hopkins doctor was, Casey's in the 1% of the 1%. I mean, his story is unbelievable. But one of the 1,000 things that he did in his treatment was a drastic diet shift. And lucky for him, he's married to a chef. So she was, excited to do so much research and really brought, plant-based eating into his world that he had not been participating in prior. And I'm not, I should say, I'm not just divulging secrets of Casey. I wrote an article about this that I can actually link in our show notes as well. So I'm not sharing. I'm not HIPAA laws or anything like that. But he's openly shared and willing to help anybody who needs it. But Mom did adopt that, and so when I flew out that one time, it was the same time as the tennis weekend when I steered her around the tennis court. It's like she was so tired and overwhelmed, and it's like I want to eat healthy, but it's, exhausting. Even if you're perfectly healthy, I think cooking a healthy meal and shopping and all of that can be kind of overwhelming,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Shopping and chopping. And
Right, and all
Yes.
the things. So
The
it's
chopping is the worst part.
I know. So my sister and I focused on, well, what is something we could do to help? We can stock our freezer with healthy things that all they have to do is thaw it out. So we made huge batches of vegetable soups and, various things that they could just get out without any effort. So it's just at your fingertips.
You mean
the
George?
juicing.
And the juicing, bought a juicer. She was having so many vegetables.
And George became a chef. Then George, your husband, became a chef as well then.
The best he could.
I
know
sure.
he's been wonderful through all of this, and yeah.
So-
I feel so sorry after going through this for single parents or just singletons. It's
Yeah.
just like, how do you manipulate your days?
Yeah,
How do
he
you
did a lot.
manage?
So, and with your diet, obviously, yeah, you have a great support system, and George has been there through it all, I'm sure, and then some. But you have a great support system, and then you have people like Casey who you could learn about nutrition from, and we have the internet. Sometimes that can be dangerous, but
Yeah.
it's also great because you learn so much about nutrition, and especially for a cancer patient. So you started eating. I will just call it your cancer diet.
Yeah.
In 2016-ish.
anti-cancer
The
diet,
anti-cancer
yes.
diet in the 2016-ish period. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And really, to share what that is in a simple way would be mostly plant-based.
Okay.
As many fruits and vegetables as you can, a low sugar diet, a low dairy diet.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't have a dietitian sitting next
Yeah,
to me,
yeah.
but it worked for Casey. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm
Sign
in.
me up.
I'm in.
Right. Do you allow yourself a little treat every now and then?
I do much more. I have been no evidence of disease for 5 years.
Yeah.
Knock on wood,
Yeah,
and
great.
thank you, Lord.
Congratulations. Yeah.
So grateful every minute of every day.
Yeah.
But I find myself, Dan, allowing more treats.
Or how about a custard once in a while or something like that? Or have you?
I don't go that far.
You don't go that far.
No.
Okay. All right.
But if a family member's having a cookie,
She's like, can I just have one bite?
yeah,
Yeah, you
let me
gotta-
just
Let me
tear
just
off
Little
take a little
taste.
bite.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not hard,
Sure.
at this point.
Right. You're used to it. And I mean, let's be honest, fruits and vegetables and, plant-based foods are pretty good if they're prepared in a
Right.
way that makes them really good, right? So I don't think most of us, well, I shouldn't say that. Many of us don't mind eating fruits and vegetables.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and especially doing things like a huge batch of soup and just freeze it. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's not like, I have to chop up a salad and I'm tired. It's just
Yeah.
like, and take the soup out of the
Well,
freezer.
and you know what else? Oh, and organic. I forgot to say.
Uh-huh.
Organic is
Sure.
a big part of what we learned from the Casey diet. And so many more places have organic food now.
Yeah. A lot more places have.
It was harder to find in 2016.
Yeah, no, it's everywhere.
For me, it would be salt. I love salty food,
Me
right?
too.
So that's the hard part, If I'd had to cut salt out completely or very close to completely, that would be a challenge. But I think faced with salt or survival, I think
Yeah.
survival
Right,
would probably
right,
take precedence. Yeah.
And I haven't worried about
Well, I was going to
salt.
say, we all have the family blood pressure that's naturally low. So it's like, I feel like that's never been an issue for you.
Yeah, I haven't worried about salt. It was more sugar.
More the sugars, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Good.
that was always your go-to back in the day of like, I'm stressed, your emotional eating with sugar.
So then you were doing that, the pilot what are we calling it? The
Clinical trial.
clinical trial, thank you. I see my mind is going. So the clinical trial, it took you said about 4 years, 5 years, and then you were cancer-free.
I was involved with the clinical trial for 3 years.
3 years, okay.
And then 2020, March, it was like decision time.
Okay.
And I'd already had a good response, very good response. And, the hospitals are
Right.
stressed.
That was the
It's
start
like
of COVID.
Right.
Start of COVID, yeah. That was what
March
I was
2020. Right.
alluding to.
Right.
Yeah.
I picked up what
knew that.
I picked
We all
up
know
what you were putting down.
March 2020.
March 2020.
Oh, that's when I stayed home a lot.
Yeah. Right.
And so that was the doctor and I, and it actually was a telephone call, and probably the clinical nurse, and we're all deciding what to do with Peg. And we decided, because we didn't talk about FDA approved.
Well, I was just going to say we're going to get to that, but I want to back up 1 second because one, I think, interesting part of being in a clinical trial was, each time you met and and you saw it's shrinking, but then, you'd weigh side effects and do we lower the dose? And that was always a scary part because I have no knowledge of all clinical trials. I know in this clinical trial, if they lowered the dose, you can't go back up. So you really had to think, are side effects, and that's when the neuropathy started, right? Or that was like your main side effect. So
Well, there
several,
were a lot.
several. But
You just don't know about them all.
Yeah. Are the side effects, will they start to let up a little bit if we lower the dose? So it was just a real delicate dance that you could never go backwards. But the bottom line is the big news was that it was FDA approved.
Okay.
And by doing that, now they can play with it, because they had to have that raw, perfect data to get it approved. Now they can do different things. So I have this article from Advance UW Carbone Cancer Center. And this is very exciting. So Dr. Lang, and you can shout out Dr. Lang. He's a fabulous, fabulous doctor, and we'll talk about him in a second. But Dr. Lang said that the antibody drug conjugate approach benefited about 40% of patients, which is the stat that Mom threw out there earlier, which was much better than the standard approaches at the time. Additional research has shown that combining that antibody drug conjugate with immunotherapy has yielded a 70 to 80% response rate for patients.
Wow.
So now they can play, and it's like, well, how much of the drug do we need to be effective and have you live your best life? So, it's like they can play with that cocktail.
That's
a bit.
fantastic.
I know. So it really is huge, huge news and wonderful for bladder cancer patients.
So do you know how many people were in that clinical trial with you?
We heard, and I'm not sure that this is exact either.
Yeah.
This is a show full of lies. We're all about rumors and lies.
We're
here
on brand here. Old news. Yeah.
I think it was only like 77 or 75 people.
So under 100,
in
basically.
Yeah. In 7 different locations throughout the country.
Okay.
I mean, phase 1 is so different because they're really looking for efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it making a difference?
Mm-hmm.
And safety.
Yeah.
So they're weighing those two things all the time. And then they wanted to look at dosage. And again, because it was a trial, it was so strict that Carrie was alluding to. And but when the side effects got so severe, they did make a decision that we have to lower the dose. It's like, no, don't lower the dose.
Yeah. I'm doing so well other than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it was, the exciting part was each time they came back from the CT and said, still working at the lower dose. And then again and again and again until it was gone.
Well, it's got to be great to know, too, that you and those other under 100 people, you're kind of like the pioneers helping so many other people.
It is wonderful, and the doctors said that to me weekly and thanked me for being a part of it. And it's just like, that's very nice of you to say that, but I'm really in it for me.
Honesty, right? Right. You want to get better, but it's great that other people get help. Yeah, I get that.
Right.
Yeah.
And talk for a moment about the doctors and nurses. They made all the difference in the world as well.
They did, I'm always, like I said at the beginning, if I can sing their praises, let me, because my own clinical trial nurse was at my disposal, like, you know, every day, it seemed like. I wanted to say 24/7, but she did have children.
She had a life, right? Yeah.
She did go
have a
home.
life.
Yeah.
But I felt that security, that anything that would happen, that I would like, is this normal? Should we do this? What, you know, I could just email her. She would read it. She had, you know, instant contact with the doctors, and she would get back to me. And it was just so wonderful. And the doctors would give you as much time every single week as you needed. They had such a unique way of handling their patients that you didn't know which of the 5 you were going to see.
Oh.
And the reason being is that they wanted to give every single patient as much time as that patient needed. And when that person was done, then the next doctor would rotate into a different room. I don't know if I described that very well, but do you get what I'm saying?
It was a big team. I mean, the team worked
It
so
was the
closely
teamwork,
together.
Right.
and that you could, you know, sometimes you go to the doctor and it's like, okay, your 10 minutes are up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 5.
Because they're seeing a lot of people, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
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 But they never made us feel that way at
I
all.
never felt rushed.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Well, and you were so set to sing their praises and raise money for bladder cancer that for your 70th birthday, you started a fundraiser. Would you like to share?
It's like, how can we give back? I'm alive for my 70th birthday. That was not guaranteed by any means. So it's like, what can we do? What can we do? And there was a great lady that was working that we could contact, and she set it up for us, this fundraiser. And it was through social media. Through
Well, and this was a big deal because Mom is one, it's like she never wanted to ask people for money. Somebody offered to have a fundraiser for her, and she's like, oh my gosh, no. You know, please.
That's hard to do.
Put that money towards something
get
else.
that.
But because this was not for her,
Right.
it was the broader cause of more research, more clinical
Research.
trials.
cancer research.
Yeah. Then and you started with a low goal.
Right. It was my 70th, and there were some family parties, some friends parties, and in my invitations, it's like, don't buy me a card. I don't want a $5 card. Give that money to bladder cancer.
Great idea. Yeah.
And so, you know, I thought, well, maybe 20 people will give me a card. That's 5 times 20. Okay.
So the goal was low.
That's
at the
100. I can
beginning.
do that math. Yeah.
And so, you know, it just ballooned, and through my sisters and my daughters who put it on social media, and we wrote something up with pictures, and
And it's still going today.
and
I looked at the total. $37,500 so far she's raised.
Wow.
of $5 cards.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's still out there,
It's still,
and you can
and I'll put a link on our
Okay.
show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
get your $5 in today,
That's
folks.
right.
Yeah.
Every $5 helps.
It's like a card to peg.
Exactly.
Do you have a name for it? Do you call it anything?
Well, I literally found it yesterday when I was plugging in some links that we'll be including in the show notes, and I just put Peg Cokins Carbone Cancer Center, and it popped up.
And it comes up.
Popped
Okay.
right up. Yeah. But we'll put the link.
Well, and I'm sure there's other folks doing, like you said, there's a person that you had to
Work through.
work through, and there's other people doing that as well. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the more the merrier who are trying to help. That's a great
Absolutely.
thing.
Yep.
So then now, I mean, you've got that, you're fundraising for others, but what do you have to do to kind of stay on top of things and make sure everything stays okay?
Right now I'm on a 6-month that I go see the doctor
Uh-huh.
at Carbone, and it's the blood test, the
Blood test.
CT, and then we meet.
Okay.
And then we wait for the phone call that says, I'm still
All
NED,
good, yeah.
no evidence of disease. Because they don't say, you're cancer-free. That's just not the way bladder cancer works.
Okay.
It's like, no evidence of disease.
Sounds good. So how are you with the CT scans? Are you comfortable with those? Those are hard for a lot of people.
Oh, God. I can't even imagine how many I've had.
Yeah, so it's just part of life now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I mean,
What-
not great that you've had to do so many,
Right.
but great that you're used to it.
Right. It's just part of the protocol. What would you say, you mentioned faith earlier, what are some other things that help get you through the past 20 years of difficult medical things?
Faith, family, friends. I mean, we all kind of say that often, and it's very true. It's very true. If I wasn't feeling on top of the game, just a phone call, just to talk to a friend or a family or my daughter, it was just like really helped.
Yeah.
Really helped to lift spirits.
And
That's
you-
what I would always say to you. It's like, oh, you just lift my spirits, just being around.
How about you talked about nutrition and you played tennis and stuff. Do you have an exercise regime you do as well? Do you do any kind of working out?
I'm not real self-motivated.
Uh-huh.
I love group fitness classes.
Uh-huh.
And, silver sneakers or some of the, I just go with that because I think people know that term.
Sure, yeah.
But, any of the fitness centers or Ys that have classes for older people, because any movement is good movement.
Yeah.
I really
Yes.
feel that way
Yeah,
because
I agree.
balance with neuropathy is definitely something that you have to keep working on. And then on the tennis court in March of 2023, I blew out my my root meniscus in my left knee.
Which she was told was like one of the worst knee things that could happen. But this is a real testament to what shape she's in, because most of the time they said they don't do this surgery on people her age, but because she's so active, because she's so healthy, they did it. It was a wicked recovery.
But you're back to tennis now?
She is.
Right.
Good.
You couldn't put any weight on I couldn't put any weight on my left leg for 3 months.
Jeez.
So you can imagine.
Talk
Yeah.
about caregiver George.
Right.
He
Yeah.
gets 1,000 gold stars.
You get the stars, George.
Yeah,
way to go.
big time.
Right. So when you were saying about fitness, so then I did have a lapse again.
Yeah.
That I couldn't put any weight on my left leg.
Understandable.
But we
yeah.
got through that too.
Yeah, but now she said
We
she
got through
goes
that.
to the Y 4 days a week and plays tennis, and we walk, and definitely active,
Yeah,
active
fantastic.
lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, like I said at the beginning, you look so healthy. I mean, I think most of us would love to be able to say in your 70s, you're still as active as you are, and you look great. So,
And
what a story.
diet and exercise for any patient, any cancer patient, probably everybody.
I was going to say
It's-
any person.
every
it's
person.
like you're getting ready to what's going to happen to you. I could withstand the side effects probably better than a lot of people because of the state of being that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know, some people had to drop out of the clinical trial, of course.
Sure.
So
Yeah, it's like training for life.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for being here, Mom.
Oh, thanks.
We appreciate you taking the time to be with us and sharing your story, and hope it really helps people out there, and just to, have some more things to put in your pocket to go ask your doctor. I mean, of course,
Right.
disclaimer,
Yeah.
we are not offering medical advice. We're just giving you maybe more ideas, tools to take with you as you have your own conversations with your own doctor.
Yeah.
One
Great.
thing we mentioned in the car about really patient-to-patient help,
Oh, yeah.
and we did find it wasn't available 20 years ago, but it's called Beacon. I call it Beacon, and it's Bladder Cancer Advocacy Network.
And it's BCAN, right?
Correct.
We'll add a link to that as well.
Yeah, and that is really helpful with people telling their stories, people asking questions, because, like I said 20 years ago, I did not know one person that had bladder cancer.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Right.
Right. To have that online community that you could ask in real-time questions, and you've answered questions, haven't you?
Oh, I've answered many. And, yeah, I feel like, why am I alive? I better be helping other people. So...
That's the positive side of the social media and online
Right,
world, right?
right,
So you
right.
can actually share good information with other people and hopefully, like you said, help them, give people hope.
And I'll have friends of friends of friends call me and say, could you please call this person
Sure.
and advise them on, your whole journey, what you've learned. And, yeah, it's patient helping patient.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Person helping person. Well, thank you once again, Mom. It's been great having you here on Old News with Dan and Carrie, and we'll provide all the links we have mentioned at the bottom so you can refer easily.
And make sure you press subscribe to hear more podcasts from Old News with Dan and Carrie, and tell your friends about it too. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
That's old news for now.
Join us next time.